promoting dialogue.
Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink, and here are the top stories. Nigerian Senate passes vote of confidence in Akpabio's leadership.
That our rules are respected. That is the only way we can guarantee peace, we can guarantee law and order. That is the only way we can have an atmosphere in which we'll be able to do our job and serve the Nigerian people.
Ahead of October presidential elections in Côte d'Ivoire, EU announces €7 million support for transparent and peaceful polls. Ghana's President Mahama meets heads of state agencies, warned that loss-making will not be tolerated.
We'll mark you based on your performances. If you're not matching with the pace of the reset agenda, you might be asked to step aside.
And in Niger, petrol scarcity bites harder as population voice frustration. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. This evening, we'll begin in Burkina Faso, where the head of government, Jean-Emmanuel Wadr, will appear before the National Assembly this Friday to present a speech on the situation of the nation. During his address to the Transitional Legislative Assembly, ALT, the Prime Minister will take stock of government action for the year 2024. He will highlight the significant results achieved, the challenges encountered, as well as the prospects for consolidating the achievement within the framework of the implementation of the commitments of the President of FASO, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. After his presentation, he will answer questions and comments from MPs, thus providing a space for exchange and dialogue on the government's priorities. It should be noted that this exercise is enshrined in the Constitution of Burkina Faso, which in Article 109 stipulates that the Prime Minister shall present the situation of the nation directly to the deputies at the opening of the first session of the National Assembly. This presentation shall be followed by debates and shall give rise to any vote. Now, amid the controversy rocking the Nigerian Senate, the Red Chamber on Thursday passed a vote of confidence in the leadership of Senate President Godswill Akpabio. This comes after Senate leader Senator Opeyemi Bamidele, under orders 40 and 51, moved a motion on the recent controversy surrounding the upper chamber, underscoring the need for clarity, adherence to legislative rules, and a renewed focus on governance. Senator Natasha Akpotu-Uduaghan, representing Kogi Central, was suspended by the Senate following allegation of sexual harassment against the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio. Francis Boniface completes the story.
In his motion of urgent national importance, Senator Opeyemi Bamidele, citing orders 41 and 51 of the Senate Standing Order, hinged the vote of confidence on Akpabio's performance since the inauguration of the 10th Senate, in spite of the sexual harassment narrative. He said that the issue before the Senate, as of the time it was referred to the Ethics and Privileges Committee, had nothing to do with sexual harassment. However, he maintained that at no point between August 2023 and the present was the Senate informed of any sexual harassment claims, adding that the issue at hand was purely about disciplinary measures related to the breaches of Senate rules.
Whatever we do in this chamber, we are guided by rules. And these our rules are also drawn pursuant to the constitution of our country. So it's not a rule of men. Is a rule of law. It's not about some men trying to gang up against a woman or anybody. It's about ensuring that our rules are respected. That is the only way we can guarantee peace, we can guarantee law and order. That is the only way we can have an atmosphere in which we'll be able to do our job and serve the Nigerian people.
To conclude, the Senate passed a vote of confidence in the leadership of Senate President Godswill Akpabio, commending the way the matter was handled. In his remarks, the Senate President Godswill Akpabio, while thanking his colleagues for the vote of confidence passed in him, said Senator Natasha Akpotu-Uduaghan had embarrassed the country by distorting the facts about her suspension at the Interparliamentary Union, IPU, saying that she gave a false narrative of the issue.
It's also important for the public to know that whatever decision we arrive at here is unanimous. And I recall the last decision we took, and which concerned one of our sisters here, the senior Senator Natasha Akpotu-Uduaghan. When she left the chambers, she went to Brekete Radio and she went to Arise Television and she distorted the facts. I'm aware further that she has now externalized the matter by attempting to embarrass the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The Deputy Senate President, Senator Barau Jibrin, who presided over Thursday's plenary session in response to the allegations, said the Senate reiterates its stance that the judiciary should be allowed to handle the matter. The development marked a strong statement from the Senate, signaling solidarity with Akpabio and a determination to prioritize governance over political disputes.
Francis Boniface filed that report. Ahead of the October 2025 presidential elections in Côte d'Ivoire, the European Union launched a €7 million program in Abidjan on Thursday aimed at supporting the organization of credible and peaceful elections. Called All Committed Elections Without Gbagba, that's conflict in Ivorian slang, this project targets young people in particular through civic education and awareness-raising activities on democratic participation. The initiative also provides for the deployment of 700 observers from civil society to monitor the presidential elections of October 25, 2025 and the legislative elections of 2026, as well as support for electoral institutions. Abdullahi Hassan completes the story.
Côte d'Ivoire has been marked by a deadly post-election crisis, notably in 2010 to 2011, when violence left around 3,000 people dead. During the last presidential election in 2020, which saw Alassane Ouattara seek a controversial third term, at least 85 people were killed in clashes. In the face of tensions, the EU ambassador to Côte d'Ivoire, Francesca De Mauro, stressed the need to strengthen the population's confidence in the electoral process. She clarified that the EU had no role in interfering in the elections but supported a key objective, social cohesion. According to several observers, tensions could be exacerbated by the possible exclusion of opposition candidates. Former President Laurent Gbagbo, who has already declared his candidacy, remains ineligible for election due to a criminal conviction that prevents him from being registered on the electoral roll. Recall, the Independent Electoral Commission is due to publish the provisional electoral roll, which is expected to include around 9 million voters. The opposition is calling for a revision of this roll before the October presidential election, a point that could become a source of tension in the coming months.
Abdullah Hassan reporting there.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's take you now to Ghana, where President John Dramani Mahama has declared that the era of mediocrity and financial mismanagement in state-owned enterprises, SOEs, must come to an end. He has consequently warned that loss-making SOEs will no longer be tolerated and will either be merged, privatized, or closed. Speaking at a meeting with CEOs of specified entities under the State Interest and Governance Authority, SIGA, on Thursday, President Mahama called for a complete reset of SOEs to drive their transformation. His comment comes in the wake of Finance Minister Kasila Tofosun's revelation that many SOEs are struggling financially and have failed to achieve profitability. According to President Mahama, the meeting was not just a forum for discussion, but a decisive call to action demanding bold leadership, accountability, and an unwavering commitment to excellence from SOE executives.
We'll mark you based on your performances. If you're not matching with the pace of the reset agenda, you might be asked to step aside. And so, if that adds to the horror movie, that's the intention. Thank you. Demanding bold leadership, accountability, and an unwavering commitment to excellence from you as chief executives of state-owned enterprises. This meeting reaffirms my commitment to the promise of a shake-up of all loss-making SOEs and realigning them to break even and transition into profit-making. As you have all noted, my 2024 campaign promises and the 120-day social contract with the good people of Ghana were not mere rhetoric. The 2023 State Ownership Report produced by the State Interest and Governance Authority, SIGA, reveals the inefficiencies affecting many of our SOEs. And this demands that we act with conviction and courage to tackle the systemic challenges confronting these enterprises. Many of our specified entities have operated inefficiently for far too long. They've been burdened by waste, underperformance, conflict of interest, and a complete detachment from national interest.
Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama speaking there. Meanwhile, the Minister of Finance in Ghana has shut down the central bank's request for a 53 billion cedis, or about $3 billion bailout. Instead, the ministry has suggested the selling of the newly built central bank's headquarters and the exploration of internal solutions. The Bank of Ghana has been reeling from a 70 billion cedi loss, largely due to a 50% cut from the controversial domestic debt exchange program under the former government. The Minister of Finance, Dr. Castle Attoforsen, insists the government cannot step in just yet. However, financial experts say the move does not only leave the central bank in financial turmoil, but also puts Ghana on a collusion course with the International Monetary Fund, IMF. The IMF had expected the government and the central bank to work out a recapitalization plan, but with no bailout in sight, tensions are mounting on how the regulator will restore its financial health. Listen to Finance Minister Dr. Attoforsen.
Bank of Ghana had generated so much debt, so much deficit. As a result, their balance sheet is not healthy, and that they have generated negative equity. Apparently, the previous administration and the Bank of Ghana had signed an MOU for the government of Ghana or the taxpayer to recapitalize the central bank with 53 billion Ghana cedis. I've asked the Bank of Ghana to look within and cut expenditure because the taxpayer cannot afford 53 billion. I've communicated that to them. First of all, they have to look within. You've seen their new head office, very big building. They have a choice to sell and lease back. If they want to, they have to look within and cut expenditure and reduce. The taxpayer cannot afford 53 billion Ghana cedis. Giving 53 billion Ghana cedis to the central bank will simply mean that we will have to deny the taxpayer some public good, like roads, like schools, like hospitals. Is that what we want? Can we afford it at this stage? The question is no. The answer is no. We cannot be able to afford that.
Ghana's Minister of Finance, Dr. Attoforsen. Well, in Sierra Leone, President Julius Maada Bio has fired the head of the Immigration Service days after footage was published showing him receiving a birthday gift from a fugitive Dutch drug kingpin. The footage of Olosin Kane being handed a present by Johannes Ledekars, which has not been independently verified by The Guardian, was published by the investigative outlet following the Money and the Dutch newspaper Algemeen Dagblad on Friday. Chris Vatricho has more details in this report.
The dinner is understood to have been held in an upmarket restaurant in Freetown, the country's capital. Ledekers, 33, one of Europe's most wanted fugitive, was sentenced in absentia to 24 years in prison for drug smuggling by a Rotterdam court last June. Kane was relieved of his duties the same day the report was published, but authorities in Freetown did not disclose the reason for his dismissal in a short statement by the presidential secretary. For months, speculation has swirled in the West African country that Kane and other members of the political elite had been helping Ledekers accumulate influence. A report in January placed him at a New Year Day's church service in President Julius Maada Bio's hometown, sitting near the leader's daughter, Agnes Bio, with whom he is believed to be in a relationship. Days before that event, the Immigration Ministry introduced an investment for citizenship scheme under Kane's direction called Go for Gold. It offers a fast-track path to citizenship in 90 days for investors willing to pay $140,000, representing 108,000 euros. The traditional route to naturalization involves 8 years residence. Ledekers has a passport from Turkey, where he previously resided after going on the run from Dutch authorities. It is unknown if he has a Sierra Leonean documentations too. Ledekers was sentenced in absentia by a Rotterdam court last June to 24 years in prison for sex drug transport totaling 7,000 kilograms of cocaine, an armed robbery in Finland, and ordering the murder of an associate.
Chris Vatricho reporting there. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal, and online on 94.9 FM and WDR.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Nigerian Senate passes vote of confidence in Akpabio's leadership. Ahead of October presidential elections in Cote d'Ivoire, EU announces €7 million support for transparent and peaceful polls. Ghana's President Mahama meets the head of state agencies, warned that laws making will not be tolerated. And still ahead in Niger, petrol scarcity bites harder as population voice frustration. We do have a guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Well, we're streaming live on wadr.org, YouTube and Facebook. Now, across regions in Niger, for almost a week, the scarcity of petroleum products is hitting hard on the population as service stations have been short of enough premium fuel to meet local demands. As a result, long queues of cars and motorbikes have been forming, and those do not have a supply. Augustin Koli completes the story.
Fuel is rationed by the Niger Petroleum Company, Sonidep, and some people say this does not make their day-to-day activities any easier. Musa Kasu says he drove all the way to the Bukoki quarter of the capital Niamey only to be told that there was no petrol.
When I left for Banifondu to come here to Bokoshumi, they told me straight away that there was no petrol. Now someone has just called me to tell me to come to Wadata. Someone with a liter of petrol. For 2 to 3 liters, you have to waste 1.5 liters. It's a nightmare.
Experiencing a fuel shortage is unusual for Nigerians. An oil-rich country which had its first refinery was built in 2011. Today, due to a number of factors, it is unable to meet the national demand, estimated at over 2 million liters a day. Some residents like Asuman Hamadu Sule, some people worry about the lack of transparency in fuel management.
We don't have much information on this because the authorities who are obliged to give us full explanation are not doing so. We are at a loss. We don't have any real information.
Why Sonidep, a parastatal corporation in Niger responsible for the importation, transportation, storage, refining and marketing of petroleum products, blames the situation on a stock shortage. However, this argument is dismissed by transport operators who are the most impacted. In addition to the scarcity of fuel, they are seeing their number of clients go down. The Taxi and Urban Transport Drivers Union believes the state should increase daily production to meet demand. Agali Ibrahim is the union's general secretary.
We think the state must take a step forward in terms of production, because if we are told that there are 25 trucks for the city of Niamey, I think it's not enough. Today, as soon as they stop oil smuggling, everyone goes to the pump. And when everyone is at the pump, what is at the pump cannot be enough.
Tanker trucks are expected to increase from 24 to 100 a day in the capital alone. Organizations are also calling on the government to open the borders with Benin and Nigeria to access temporary supplies.
Augustin Koli filed that report. We head to the Gambia, where the National Human Rights Commission held a one-day advocacy meeting for the ratification of the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture, OPCAT, and the establishment of a national prevention mechanism in the Gambia. The meeting aims to popularize the legal document to ratify them. WDL's Uncle Janko tells us more in this report.
In 2023, the Gambia enacted the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act 2023, which in part domesticates the Convention Against Torture ratified in September 2018. The act provides domestic framework for the prosecution of torture cases, and it recognizes the NHRC as one of the institutions that torture allegations can be reported to. However, the Gambia has neither signed nor ratified the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture, OPCAT, which entered into force in June 2006. Consequently, it has not yet established the National Preventive Mechanism, NPM. In view of the above, the NHRC organized a one-day advocacy meeting to raise awareness on the OPCAT and the importance of establishing a country-specific NPM. Junto Drame is a commissioner of the Human Rights Commission.
So our today's process, therefore, is twofold. One, to create awareness on OPCAT, and two, to do advocacy for the ratification of OPCAT. And when we do that, then the state would also then establish the national preventive mechanism, or mechanism, so to speak, at the state level.
Meanwhile, the Solicitor General and Legal Secretary of the Gambia, Hussein Tamasi, reiterated the government's commitment to ratifying international conventions.
The ratification of OPCAT is important because it is not only a step towards aligning our legal framework with international standards, but also to demonstrate our seriousness as a country in getting rid of torture in all its forms and making culprits accountable.
The Human Rights Commission hopes that the government will ratify and sign the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture in the nearest future.
Sankle Janko reporting there.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, our guest this evening is Ghanaian economist Dr. Evans Nuno. He joins from Accra about the most recent development in the financial sector, which is in the Ministry of Finance rejection of 53 billion cedis or $30 billion bailout package from the Bank of Ghana. Since that news went viral, experts have expressed mixed reactions about the executive's decision and argued the many ways that such a move could affect Ghana's economy, the country's agreement with the IMF, and its debt restructuring program. But Dr. Evans Nuno holds a different perspective.
I think it's a step in the right direction. In 2022, the Bank of Ghana allowed itself for their independence to be compromised because the Bank of Ghana did excessive monetary financing. And that brought us to where we are now. So they ran into negative balances. And Dr. Ernest Addison and his team should have known that it was for a good reason we gave them that independence. So if they did not manage their things well, they financed activities of the government excessively and they ran into negatives. And that triggered inflation, and inflation got to as high as over 50%. So this new government is targeting to bring inflation as low as 11%. And I'm not too sure they have time to be dishing out monies unnecessarily. So if the Bank of Ghana knew that it had run into negatives and still decided to put up a new building and would now request the government to bail it out, I don't think it's economically prudent. So I side with the minister's position, the government's position.
We don't completely know what the CBN needs this extra money for. It could be for other reasons. And there are experts like yourself who have already reacted, saying that this could really set a new cause, a collision cause between Ghana and the IMF and other creditors in the area of debt restructuring.
If anything at all, what the government is doing should rather make IMF happy. Because IMF wouldn't want Ghana to spend anyhow, to throw money fruitless ventures. Remember, the government did not reject the request. It only gave a directive that, yes, you are right, we have to bail you out, but sell the building we helped you to bail, and then use the money for that purpose. But if, for example, if you were asking about the removal of those taxes, the e-levy and the rest, then I can easily say that the Bank of Ghana would only look at alternatives. Otherwise, they can easily have problems with us. But with this directive that the Bank of Ghana should sell their building and use that to help themselves out, I don't think that it should give us any problem with the IMF.
So at least we now know, according to you, that the government is as much as possible trying to be prudent and avoid wasteful spendings. But the Minister of Energy, John Jinafo, announced that the government will soon construct Ghana's second largest gas processing plant. Do you think all of this put together will help stabilize Ghana even more?
Yes, I think the government is intentionally working on key areas of the economy that will help us to achieve stability in terms of our macroeconomic indicators. And the energy sector is a key area or a crucial area to consider. So I think that it is good that the government is attempting to do that. And I think once they are intentional about it, they can do, because they decide where our resources must be. That will help us to stabilize, because instability or distortion in the energy sector would have a trickling effect throughout the other sectors of the economy. Electricity, transportation, everything that has to do with energy would translate into inflated prices. And that once we are attempting to stabilize prices and to achieve macroeconomic stability, I think that's important we look at that sector.
Dr. Evans Nuno is a Ghanaian economist. And here is Sport News with Sankle Janko.
Hello there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Dr. Patrice Motsepe has been re-elected unopposed as president of the Confederation of African Football (CAF) for a second 4-year term. The decision was confirmed at the 11th CAF Extraordinary General Assembly in Cairo on Wednesday, extending his leadership of the organization until 2029. Motsepe's re-election comes after a first term widely praised for stabilizing CAF's finances and boosting its global profile. Under his leadership, the organization set several new records at the Africa Cup of Nations AFCON Côte d'Ivoire 2023, attracting a record 1.4 billion viewers worldwide according to CAF official website. Prize money for major tournaments, including the CAF Champions League and CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations, has also increased significantly, alongside enhanced financial support for member associations. The 63-year-old faced no opposition after the nomination deadline passed in November 2024. His decision to run again followed requests from member association presidents and key stakeholders, according to media reports. Elsewhere, the under-17 women's team of Côte d'Ivoire achieved a remarkable feat by turning the tables against Burundi in the second round of the 2025 FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup qualifiers. After losing 3-1 at home in the first leg, the Young Elephants responded with a clinical 3-0 win in the return match on Wednesday to secure passage in the third and final round of qualifiers. And in Europe, Real Madrid secured qualification into the round of 16 after a 4-2 penalty shootout win against city rivals Atletico Madrid. The Los Blancos will take on Arsenal in the quarterfinals as they are keen on defending their title. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And that's it on this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. And many thanks to Amado Juf and Sheikh Njai for the technical support. Do connect with us on all of our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, at WDL News, and Facebook West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our flagship environment program, Enviroscope. I am Imo Edet. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New FM 90.